The Switch 1 has received numerous absolute bangers of releases throughout its life. We all know the big hitters: Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, Mario Odyssey, Splatoon 2 and 3, Animal Crossing New Horizons, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and my personal favourites of course, the Xenoblade series, and so many more. However, if there is just one title that I would argue deserves a spot alongside these Switch Hall of Fame participants, yet often isn't given the same acclaim online, it's Platinum Games' 2019 underdog, Astral Chain. While this video admittedly isn't a million miles away from the standard format of a review, I want to structure it in a very specific way. A criticism I could surely see someone who hasn't played this game, or going way back in time, has only just seen the game's initial reveal before its release throwing at it, is that it's more than likely all style and no substance. I intend to rebuke this. First, I will talk about how the game does indeed have the former, style, in abundance, primarily relating to things like the visuals, user interface, music, and so on, but secondly, how it's bursting at the seams too with substance, which is of course predominantly the gameplay. Astral Chain is a brilliant example of a game possessing both style and substance. Let's get into it. Interpreted through these two key categories, the following is why I believe Astral Chain is the Switch's most overlooked masterpiece. It's the first thing on everyone's minds when they see footage of this game. This shit looks good, especially since it's 6 years old now and ran on the original Switch. But it's not just the raw graphical fidelity, the resolution, texture quality, lighting and so on that gives this game its incredible style. It's every aspect of the visual experience that comes together to form a truly distinct and memorable vibe. It's one of those things that's quite hard to articulate or prove without having played the title for yourself, but this game oozes with style. From the clean and intuitive user interface that manages to be beautiful without sacrificing usability and excellently captures that futuristic, cyberpunky vibe. The way each boss has its own unique, stylish intro cut-in that almost looks like something from Persona and tells you these guys are not to be messed with. The way the entire world seamlessly transitions into flat, transparent shapes, graphical lines, grids and contours, as if data itself has somehow been rendered in a visible format whenever you activate your futuristic iris scanner, to more subtle details that probably don't consciously register to the player but subliminally make for a more atmospheric experience, like the way the HUD only ever so slightly moves as your character does. Overall, none of these were in any way necessary to create an enjoyable game, which is what makes their inclusion here all the more appreciated. It's style for the sake of style, yes, but it comes on top of pre-existing substance. The developers went the extra mile to give the game as much of a distinct atmosphere as possible, and it worked. Long story short, you just feel cool playing the part cyberpunk, part Neo Tokyo, part vaporwave, part post-apocalyptic veritable cocktail that is uniquely Astral Chain. Sticking to the visuals alone, Astral Chain's character, or specifically enemy designs, which we'll start with, are yet another stylish delight. You've surely seen some of them already in this gameplay, but goddamn these guys look awesome. My weeb ass is especially enamoured by this axe-wielding, fire samurai-looking boss Chimera, as they're called. But although the bosses, the ones that receive the unique cut-in animations delineating their names, are among the game's greatest looking foes, even the common, run-of-the-mill baddies have incredible designs. I love this one dude who carries a massive shield and almost looks like something from Doom, and these incredibly annoying but beautiful flying pests that make excellent use of a purple palette. What baffles me though is that in the conversation of Astral Chain's superb sense of style, I've so far somehow failed to mention the stars of the show, the titular chain-bound legion themselves. More on their role in the gameplay later, but on a purely aesthetic level, these guys look badass, like a blend between the game's chimeric enemies and Xenoblade 3's Ouroboros designs. And it's not just that the legions look nice, it's also that their looks are all different. Although retaining an overall aesthetic in terms of textures, colours and so on, you'd never find yourself confusing the hulking behemoth of the Axe Legion to the airborne acrobatics of the slender Arrow Legion. What's more, the designers have done a superb job at simply making them look deadly, as they should, through the robust fists of arm, or razor-sharp sword of, sword. You can entirely believe the feats of destruction coming out of them as you play. If I am permitted a conversational 180, although I discussed the game's boss designs not long ago, there are certain other bosses simply on another level to these that I argue deserve to be put in and thus discussed under their own independent category. Let's call them super bosses. No, not you, get out of here, Rotbart. The, quite literally, big two are really the final Jenna fight, Jenna Apotheosis, and Noah, Soul of Ambition, and man, that is an anime-ass name. Confronting both, you feel as if you've been placed abruptly into some conflict against a Godzilla kaiju or Pacific Rim Jaeger, and handed a controller, and it's every bit as awesome as you'd want it to be. Though this does delve a little more into the substance department, these aren't mere set pieces either, not mere glorified cutscenes representing no real challenge, comparable to something like the Dark Beast Ganon fight from Breath of the Wild. Rather, they feel genuinely intimidating and thus fun to go up against. Little details like the camera tilt and shake effects resulting from every slam of a titanic fist or laser blast also making these encounters feel real. And god do they look cool. Jenna's form embraces the visage of some terrifying perversion of an angel, complete with giant ethereal wings. But cues are also taken from puppets. The entity's one of various pairs of arms, strung up and bound by a grid of lasers as if being forced to fight against its will, and cleverly suggesting its progenitor no longer possesses control. The standout in Noah's Soul of Ambition form's design must be the theme of aberrant multiplicity. The multiple heads seemingly sprouted like some malignant tumour, each sporting a similarly generous number of threatening red glowing irises, or the writhing mass of countless tentacles attempting to pass for hair that is seriously in need of a good trim. But although both these designs, alongside others I haven't given as much spotlight to, but are similarly beautiful, like the homunculus, are incredible, they're not particularly unique. This isn't intended as a criticism whatsoever. They're still stunning and the sheer detail is outstanding, but they are the kind of thing you could reasonably expect to see as the final boss of an average JRPG, for example. The same cannot be said, however, of Astral Chain's final boss. Well, pre-final boss, its second phase. Let's talk about Noah Core. The visuals of this battle are simply astounding, and I've never seen anything quite like it in all my years of playing video games. I've never done hallucinogenics, but this is the sort of thing I would imagine such substances could make you see. It's an absolutely bonkers but beautiful mass of polygons and vibrant colours, especially standing out against the stark white background of the fight. My favourite visual aspect of it has to be whenever the boss does this attack, and walls of purple barriers like stalks of bamboo spring upward from the ceaselessly undulating geometric ground. It's easily the most unique enemy confrontation I've experienced, and we need more shit like this in games. You truly believe that you've entered the very neural structure of some incomprehensible godlike being, with nothing making sense in the best way possible. TLDR, Noah Core is incredible, excellently portraying the sheer style of Astral Chain. I briefly mentioned music earlier, but it's another element of the style side of the experience that's done so well it warrants more of a dedicated focus here. If there is just one track that deserves a spotlight, it's this one. It plays as you wander around the game's kind of hub area in between missions, Neuron HQ. Articulating what makes a piece of music good is something I've always found difficult, but I think few can argue against just how fitting and well composed this track is. It somehow feels like a fusion of music from Xenoblade and Nier, a true delight for the ears then. To reuse an almost one-to-one line from this video, where I pretty much just rant about pretty games for 24 minutes, however, it is specifically those moments where the visuals and music come together that stand out the most, as also applies to Astral Chain. The main sequence coming to mind has got to be the Dark Hero one. Anyone who's played this game will know exactly what I'm talking about, and if not, well, prepare to be blown away. A quick forewarning, just embrace the anime, I promise it's cool. The moment I remember giving me chills the most was definitely this wide shot, when the music briefly quietens down before getting the most intense in the battle immediately after. But more on that later. It's so good! And speaking of anime and music, this game quite literally has its own opening sequence and matching theme tune, which is both as cheesy and hype-inducing as you'd expect.
So keep holding on until we break this down. Feel yourself, reach for the light to darkness and despair. If there comes a time when you are falling down, I'll be your savior.
I won't interrupt the flow of this video anymore by directly playing songs, so I'll instead put the titles of some of my favourites on screen now, and they also will and have been playing in the background. Give them a listen in isolation if you're at all interested. Now, let's finally talk about the other core component of the Astral Chain experience, for which all of the aforementioned would seem hollow, did it not exist to act as its foundation: substance. When discussing Astral Chain substance-wise, what says the most about it is the following. This game has my favourite combat system in any game of all time, beating out Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, Xenoblade 1, 2, Torna 3 and X, The Witcher 3, Nier Replicant and Nier Automata, Doom, God of War, and even my close second favourite, Ghost of Tsushima. Why? Where do I even begin? Well, surely the most characteristic element of this game's combat is that you are at all times controlling not just one, but two different characters. This takes the form of your standard human, wielding what on the surface seems like a measly tripartite set of baton, or light melee weapon, a larger gladius, for heavier melee attacks, and a blaster or gun, and their chained comrade that is the Legion, pacified forms of the chimera you fight against from another dimension, wielding a suite of powerful abilities. Critically, were you controlling only one of these two personas at a time, I believe this game's combat wouldn't be half as brilliant as it is. This especially goes for the rather basic police officer human character that possesses by themselves a very bog-standard combo sequence of attacks. But even if you played as the Legion in isolation, I believe the experience would still suffer as a result. It's only the two having to be operated in tandem that makes doing battle in this title truly remarkable, as it is the link, or rather the titular chain, quite literally connecting them, that sets Astral Chain apart. The two primary abilities the chain grants you are A, using it as a kind of net to catch a charging enemy and fling them backwards by moving your Legion in between you and the enemy's shown movement path, and B, tying an enemy up, incapacitating them by moving your Legion in a 360-degree rotation around them. Both of these are incredibly fun to use, and I genuinely never got bored of them, even after using them what must have been hundreds of times over countless hours of play. There exist other, perhaps less obvious things you can do with the chain too. For example, weaving it in between multiple enemies to restrict their movement, or jumping along its path to get closer to your Legion should you require a quick escape. This latter ability is especially cool, as it can even give you access to the aerial dimension. Should you deploy your Legion against a flying enemy before immediately jumping to it, you will temporarily be airborne and can unleash your own combo of attacks from there before falling down. It's absolute brilliance, and there really is nothing else like it out there, giving you complete control over the battlefield if you know what you're doing. But even considered independently of the chain, the Legions themselves are nothing to scoff at, despite technically never controlling them directly. Indeed, should you not request they carry out a certain attack, they will follow a predetermined combo of weaker auto attacks by themselves. The things you can do with them are just incredible. For starters, there are 5 different variants you will unlock throughout the game: Sword, Arrow, Arm, Beast and Axe, all of which possess completely different sets of abilities tailored for meeting certain enemy conditions. If there's a tightly packed group of enemies, it might be worth swapping to the Arm Legion, using its unique ability of effectively piloting the mech and unleashing a flurry of punches to completely decimate the crowd. If it's flying enemies that are giving you trouble, why not try the Arrow Legion with its signature feat of being able to aim and shoot its arrows directly, either slowing down time for a more precise shot or firing rapidly if the target's stationary, and so on. As aforementioned, although each Legion has a signature ability completely unique to them, activated with the L bumper button on the controller, Sword lets you choose a defined angle of attack and slice at that alignment, useful not just for the assumed, but also for doing things like cutting invisible energy signals. Axe lets you hide behind a massive shield, and Beast allows you to ride the canine and escape certain attacks that would otherwise have restricted your movement. What's awesome is that there are also other optional and customizable attacks you can assign to each, activated by holding ZL and pressing one of the face buttons. Most of these are applicable across every Legion. For example, one lets you instantly chain up a group of enemies rather than the slower approach of doing so manually that leaves your human character vulnerable to attack. One temporarily breaks the chain and triggers the most ferocious sequence of rapid attacks from your Legion independently of your control, also letting you briefly operate another Legion simultaneously, the only opportunity in the game to have 2 on the field at once, and there are so many more. But some, similar to the signature abilities, are also totally exclusive. Arrow has one that rains down arrows along the path of your chain, useful if there's a group of enemies in a roughly straight line. The Beast's Howl dazes enemies and leaves them vulnerable to attacks, unable to counter, just naming examples for 2 of the 5. These, along with passive buffs, and yet another category of ability I've yet to mention, are unlockable in the sequence of your choosing through a complex but not excessively complicated skill tree system that's a joy to work through. Every, even single new skill having so many new applications and making me just giddy to experiment with what new opportunities it affords. The final type of attack within the series of signature abilities, assigned abilities and the one in question, are those triggered not by buttons on the controller but the analog sticks. Each Legion can attack in a certain unique way by quickly pushing the analog trigger up and down or 360 degrees in a circle before pressing the ZL button in fast succession. As I hope is apparent, there is so much to this combat, and you'll constantly be learning new strategies based on your rapidly expanding toolkit. But technically, contradicting one of my previous statements, there is just one more ability category at your disposal, unlocked right near the end of the main campaign. Furthermore, it's one I touched upon in the discussion of the game's style with the awesome Dark Hero sequence, Legion Fusion. While carrying out every one of the abilities I've just gone over in a regular battle, a kind of meter will be passively charging in the background. When it reaches maximum capacity, you will gain the ability to ditch the chain and fuse with your legion as one unified, stupendously powerful entity, almost always turning the battle in your favour, and it feels simply incredible to use. What I love the most about this form is how much its style of fighting is a sharp departure from the rest of the game's combat system. There, though you could make it button mashy if you desired, and still succeed in about some of the time, though thought does still mostly have to be put into it, here, all restrained strategy and problem solving goes out the window, and you can simply mindlessly spam simple attacks. There are actually only 2, to your heart's content, and it feels so good! The thing is, if this was the sort of combat for the entirety of the game, I would be criticizing it. You can't build an entire battle system on such a simple way of fighting without it quickly becoming stale. It's only because this style of attacking is A, unlocked so late into the game, B, is available for such a limited amount of time per fight, and C, because it's so different to the rest of the combat that it feels so incredible to use. It's like the game is patting you on the back and saying, well done for putting so much thought and strategy into it before. Your reward now for doing so is getting to just turn off your brain and let the sheer frenzy of battle overtake you, and it's genuinely one of the most satisfying things I've experienced in any game. I cannot sing the praises of it enough. TLDR, this combat system is absolutely fucking terrific, and it's something everyone should experience at least once in their gaming career. Beyond combat, the other main way Astral Chain possesses abundant substance in my view is the sheer variety in the different styles of gameplay. Yes, as is hopefully clear, the combat is incredible and very much the standout here, but it's far from the only activity you'll be engaging in. A typical file may see you go from gathering clues concerning a case that you will then be literally tested on as a de facto detective, to of course doing battle in the title's numerous engaging enemy confrontations, whether plunged into the ethereal astral plane or remaining in the cyberpunk cityscape of a regular world. 2, often within the astral plane, switching to brief top-down, almost maze-like segments, some of which require you to engage in rudimentary puzzles, using the non-combat oriented signature skills of your legions to proceed, as well as some basic platforming, to tense escape sequences that prohibit you from battling and fix your camera towards your character in the vein of a Crash Bandicoot level, to piloting a Tron-esque motorcycle, among so much more. Even for the optional, often incredibly brief side missions you can encounter in some of the game's more open levels, there is sometimes a form of gameplay involved not seen anywhere else. For example, having to carefully tilt your controller back and forth using motion controls to avoid dropping an impractically tall ice cream, or cautiously rolling an empty can along the floor at a specific angle to attract a lost cat. None of these vignettes of different gameplay styles needed to exist, but I'm so glad they do, because they ensure Astral Chain's combat, was such to even be possible to begin with, never becomes stale. And that about does it for this video. What I will say is that there is one core element of Astral Chain I didn't talk about really at all, and that's the story, so I'll briefly cover it and my thoughts on it here. Contradictory to the kinds of games I usually enjoy and talk about on this channel, Astral Chain's plot is just alright. It's a fairly run-of-the-mill alien, well technically they're not aliens, but it's the closest analogue without being pedantic, invasion story, where a humanity on its knees has confined itself to a limited area of land and struggles to fight off another dimension encroaching on their own. You play as one of 2 siblings tasked with helping eliminate the otherworldly menace in a police force using the famous legions. There is a bit more to it than that, but it never wowed me in truth. That is why I purposefully chose to omit the story from the substance section. But that's alright. This kind of game simply doesn't need some groundbreaking narrative that makes you rethink aspects of your very existence, as its style and substance are simply so compelling, it's able to stand on its own 2 feet regardless. When you're gawking at an unbelievable sequence of the world transitioning to another plane, as terrifying and beautifully designed megabosses exude their very style, or becoming mesmerized by the slick, substance-rich gameplay loop that constantly keeps you on your toes, occasionally affording you the delight of engaging in the best combat system I've ever experienced, you simply don't care. I adore Astral Chain, and I really do believe that, through its unique blending of style and substance, it's the Switch's most overlooked masterpiece. Thank you very much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!